Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me, I still have Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Professor David Awurawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office Enough, and Professor Anthony Kila, Professor of Strategy and Development and Director, Center for International Advanced and Professional Studies in Lagos. Now, Yemi and gentlemen, well, we've had three major guests today. Professor Michael Zekame, commenting on the President's national broadcast on Thursday with regard to the state of the nation. We had also Reverend Chris Okutie of the Household of God talking about, again, the coming elections and what he calls the Chris Okutie option, Toko, he calls it. And then we had from SBM Intelligence reporting on the latest polling report from that body in collaboration with Enough is Enough, which is led by Yemi Adamolekun, who is with us in the studio. So maybe I should start with you, Yemi Adamolekun, to respond to those major issues that have been raised as we prepare for the elections, 6 days from today.
So I'll start with Reverend Chris. Honestly, I'm not quite sure what he's asking for. So he says the Constitution is an illegal document. And so because it's an illegal document, it's unable to correct itself, self-correct. So therefore, we need an interim government that can give us a document and a structure that works for all Nigerians. For the sake of argument, let's say I agree. But I'm not quite sure I now understand how he's proposing that we get from here to there. So he wants to be the head of the interim government, obviously. As I said, there is a certain Chris Okutie who can make all things good. But how is that supposed to happen? Who's going to give him the powers to make all things good? Buhari, that was elected by the same illegal constitution, the the 18 presidential candidates. So I guess I was just a bit confused. So maybe the other panelists can help when they speak about how Reverend Chris imagines that this would happen. And it's also a bit disturbing, even though he had mentioned it a while ago, that he's now bringing this up a week to a presidential election. I think the word that comes to mind would be quite strong, so let me not use it. But I think it's not in Nigeria's interest, let me put it that way, to be talking about an interim government a week to an election by one man. It's like Reverend Chris is on a one-man riot squad wanting to talk about this. But maybe you can help me, Dr. Abati. How is he proposing to get us from here to there? He wants to lead the interim government. He thinks he's the best man for the job. Now, who is going to appoint him, Buhari or the people who are running to take over Buhari's job? Can someone help me?
Well, that's why I drew his attention to Norman Mailer, advertisements for myself. And he said, oh, this is not about
self-advertisement. Exactly.
But
okay. No, just to be clear, because I think that's the only comment I have on his comments. On the Naira situation, I think it's really very, very special. I saw a tweet today, an official statement from the Kaduna State government mandating Kaduna State agencies to continue to collect 500 and 1,000 Naira notes in obedience to the Supreme Court judgment. Literally saying, ignore Mr. President and the CBN, continue to collect this because the Supreme Court said so and I say so. I mean, we've said this 2 weeks ago, that it's very instructive that our governors who were silent on major issues, kidnappings, tertiary education students staying home for 8 months, are now very vocal on this cash situation. And suddenly the governors have become the supporter of the masses. Yes, there is this point around the Supreme Court, but I think we can't as a country pretend that this is new. President Buhari made it very clear a number of years ago that when it comes to national security or other issues as he may deem necessary, he would subvert the rule of law. He's been very clear about that. So I'm not quite sure why we're surprised. And the truth of the matter is not only Mr. President that is subverting the rule of law. Malame Rufai himself has been accused of subverting the rule of law and disobeying court judgments. And we've seen from several other state governors or government institutions. What are we talking about? Mohammed, what's his name? Nnamdi Kanu. Should he not have been released by a court order? He's still in jail. So anyway, those will be my contributions.
Okay, Professor Orao.
I would like to begin with the Naira thing, because I think Nigerians have suffered terribly out of incapacity to carry out strategic thinking and effective policy formulation and implementation. The Naira policy, two clear objectives are established. One is economic, the other political. The economic objective, nobody is doubting the goodness and all, because...
What's the economic objective?
Well, the economic objective is to enable the CBN to be able to have greater control of the monetary environment.
And they needed to do that in a 3-month crash
course. I'm coming.
Okay.
If it were the economic policy alone, we would not have had any issue, because the time will have been longer. They will have given the longer time. The Naira will have, the exchange will have been seamless, and the new Naira notes will have been available. So there will not have been any crisis if it were just the economic objective. But the political objective is where we have issues. They say they want to, use it to check vote buying. That's why the timing has to be very, short. The new Naira notes not available. That's why we have a crisis. So the economic dimension, no problem, but the political dimension, a whole lot of issues. Now, the focus, if you look at what has happened, is on vote buying. And I ask myself, how can we tackle the problem of vote buying? 4 key things can be done. First, secrecy of voting. If somebody wants to go and vote, you can't confirm who he has voted for. Even if you are giving money, it will be ineffectual. So, try to get the polling situation in such a way that there's secrecy in voting is a key issue. And INEC has done that already. Has listened to our cries.
No, they haven't.
We are still advocating that as much as possible, the thing should be secret. Second, don't take phone into the distance. So you can't snap and then go and say this person I voted for and collect money. That's one. Second, security forces need to do their jobs. We're ensuring that, people don't exchange money for votes on election and all that. That's second. Third, enlightenment campaigns to get people to see that it is foolish to collect 1,000, 2,000 and then mortgage your future for it. Those are 3 key things that can be done, which will be effective in checking vote buying. The fourth is this currency thing. And the first 3 target the vote sellers and buyers. So it doesn't affect the general public. The fourth, which is the currency thing, affects everybody. So it is the weakest link in the chain. And that is the one that government has settled for to do. That's what Nigerians are suffering. If the other 3 are focused on, we'll be fine. Even if the fourth one will have to be done, it won't be a case of Naira will not be available at all. In any case, the people we are even targeting are the ones who have got the little Naira notes that are available. So what Nigerians have suffered for is poor capacity for strategic thinking and policy formulation and implementation. If vote buying as a focus, there are other ways to ensure that vote buying, is checked and reduced to the barest minimum other than focusing on currency. Incidentally, I've seen people praising the Emefiele, praising the president on, whatever. I'm surprised that anybody can praise anybody for this disaster of a policy. The objectives are clear, they are good, but the implementation has been, mediocre, as we have said before. We hope we'll learn lessons from this, and moving forward, we won't have to subject Nigerians to this kind of, difficulty and suffering. They think we even negatively affect the election itself, because when you have violence, unrest, and all that, how do you conduct election? People cannot even move from one point to the other. So moving forward, these 2 people just meeting and whispering to each other and then coming up with a policy that is now affecting the life of 200 million people, that should not be the focus. Then on the interim government thing, I'm surprised. How can anybody be talking about interim government at this time? If a government, everybody has talked about, restructuring. The states, local governments, they need to have more powers. Too much in the hands of the federal government. I've said that several times before. There are 2 ways of achieving it. You call a conference, a constituent assembly, they draw up a new constitution, and then we move away from this constitution. Or what they are doing now, tinker with it, and arrive at the destination. That is what Nigerians, have been advocating for. Do not be talking about interim government. It is surprising to me. And just like Yemi said, if Chris Okoche is thinking of heading it, how does he get there? So they are just ideas, flying in the air, which we can just discuss and forget about. They have no, they should not be taken seriously.
Okay. Professor Akintenwa.
My brother David said the policy is disastrous. Good. Disastrous a policy, yes, but it is wanted.
Which policy is that?
Which policy?
Naira.
Which policy is he talking about?
No, that policy was meant for economic growth, to tame inflation, to
disastrous
check,
policy.
to manage currency.
That is Dr. Abati. That's Prof's opinion. Let him land. He said it was disastrous. You can do
No,
your
because he's starting from a negative.
He's right. But it is
Yes,
right.
because you see, you want me to share your own opinion, but you're asking me for my opinion.
No, I'm not imposing my opinion.
Yes,
I just want balance. I want balance.
Look, let me tell you whether it is the implementation. Implementation is meaningless. Outside of the policy itself, there's a nexus between the two. So you say it's a disastrous policy. I agree, but I'm saying it is wanted. Okay? It's a wanted devil.
Okay.
Now, you see, we need to put all discussions, analysis within a more general, a more general context. Let's begin with our guest, first of all. Essentially, I agree with the senior advocate of Nigeria, Jose Kome. He tried to give an equivalent of the Yoruba proverb, which Ebenezer Obey referred to in his record. Ohun tí ò dá ò dá. What is not good is not good. So he tries to say that the way the president of Nigeria can sit comfortably and disregard a court judgment is not good because of its implications, because it will serve as a very bad precedent. But our Yemi Adamalekun and he too, and you too, you started it. You gave many examples. Examples of when the same Muhammadu Buhari had not complied. So when it is convenient, they respect the rule of law. When it is not, they preach another sermon. It's another gospel. Now, I share his view there. He also said elections must hold. I agree with him. But since I agree with him, I do not want to give more reasons as to why. Let's look at what Ikemesit, the head of research of the SBM intelligence, because he said there are 2 professors in-house. He didn't know that we are 3 here, actually. And he said the 2 professors should address the aspect of your question. Why is it that people are more interested or 100% for the presidential candidature? I think one possible explanation is the domino theories. When election is organized and you now know the president already in waiting, then why would you want to dissipate energy, try to work against something? So many people want to fall in line. That is one possible argument. We come to Koche, and my sister also, Yemi, raised the issue. Fundamental questions. Yes, you want interim government now. Who will enable that? I love the 2 examples, sub-questions there. He said, is it this assemblage of competing presidential candidates that will now leave their own interests and now bring you there? Then, is it PMB? Is it the National Assembly? Fundamental questions. But I think that, you see, the argument of Jose Kome is basically that, look, there is no constitutional provision for interim government. And for as long as there is none, then it wouldn't make any sense, logical sense, to be wasting time on that. But the issue is this. According to Okotie, now he said elections will not solve Nigeria's problems, and that we need to discuss. There is a lot of meaning, logic in that. We can ask ourselves, will the election of any of the candidates address meaningfully Nigeria's problems? Certainly not. This idea of interim government dates back to the time the proprietor of, this university in Ado-Ekiti, Afe Babalola. Now, he suggested this, but people have been against that. The truth about it is simply that, look, when you refuse to discuss the problem and you are shelving it out, it's most unfortunate. Finally, you see, the problem of Nigeria as it is today, based on research finding, please, the issue is that El-Rufai has only provided a good hypothesis that has to be tested. The hypothesis is basically that some people do not want any of these presidential candidates to be there. They want to disrupt it. That's what he's saying. And here I am saying that this agenda, this controversy, is simply to ensure the long-term strategic objective of creating a homeland for the Fulani in Nigeria. And as a result of that, all the manifestations given by El-Rufai that they want to do this, they are doing that one, they want to create capital formation for people, and so on and so forth.
Well, Prof, we still have Professor Kila to intervene.
What I'm trying to say,
it's important that we manage time.
I just want us to put this discussion within a larger framework to say that El-Rufai has its own long-term objective. And by giving us all these explanations of his, we should understand it in that particular context.
Okay, it's called motive reading. It's called conspiracy theory. However, Prof, that Ebenezer Obey song that you referred to, you didn't properly contextualize it because Ebenezer Obey was speaking in a different context. You just took the first stanza. You see that the context is different. Anyway, Professor Kila, quickly, your intervention.
Well, very quickly, I don't know. Let me start from Reverend Okotie's position, which Yemi Adekunle tries to force us to be gentle on this matter. Well, taking a cue from her, let us say that I underline, personally think his position is ridiculous at best, why not treasonable at worst. It doesn't make sense to sit down and be conjuring an interim government, even though you're a political scientist, which Chris Okotie is not. Now, we put that aside. He's not doing theory. Who is Chris Okotie, the Reverend, the former singer? He's somebody who has tried to do election many times. He has lost woefully. And all of a sudden, he wants to go through another door, which is not the democratic door. This is a very sensitive time. And I think it's very good for somebody to say the truth, to say the way things are. It is not acceptable in a democratic system for somebody not to be able to get into power through legitimate, transparent, rigorous, participative way and try to get into power any other way. When Chris Okotie, on a lighter mood, when he was saying they should look for somebody everybody can trust, I thought he was talking about me. Then I realized he was talking about himself. So I think that just put, ridiculous for ridiculous, and let's move away from that. The Naira thing, I think this is the famous good intention that can lead to hell. I think, like everybody's saying, well, I don't even know if to say I agree with the Naira policy or not. Let me say I understand that there's a big political motive behind the Naira. And The president, in one of his rare moments of being candid and being proactive in speaking to the world, he came to say, I endorse, I approve this, and one of the reasons I'm doing it is to make sure that people do not buy votes and hire thugs, which I think any Nigerian who has not bought votes or hired thugs before, or who has done it and then has found God like Mantu, would know that is a bad thing to hire thugs and to buy votes, and should support that kind of thing. The problem here is that the policy did not understand Nigerians or did not care about Nigerians to know that the problem are with people who cannot afford to transact in a cashless way. The idea of cashless transaction is a good idea, but I think there's a problem of competence of management in there, because there are two basic things that should have been done during and before this policy. One is to suspend or totally eliminate the cost of transaction, so that whether I take a bus for 100 Naira or I buy a car for 100 Naira, I can actually transact with my card or transfer without payment. That would have done a lot. The other thing that could have been done is to widen the space of cashless transaction. There are 774 local governments in Nigeria. Going forward, and this is the kind of thing Chris Okote should be talking about, we should make it an accepted policy, like a universal goal, to say every local government must have at least 3 or 4, 1 per senatorial district, 3 financial institutions, whether virtual, whether fiscal or not. And for those politicians who are coming to talk about the problem of the masses, besides the fact that they've not come out to talk about it when a lot was happening in this country, including students on strike, including people dying of hunger and lack of education and full scarcity. Where were they when for 7, 8, 4 years they were in government? Did they not see that the local governments did not have banking institutions? Did they not notice that the basic amenities is not there? I think people should think very carefully when they go and vote and to look at these people. And indeed, now we know that their excellencies can become activists when something touches them. Guess what? No tears for them at all. Let us all face it. Let nobody escape. Let nobody commit suicide. Let us stay in this and face it together.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Kila. Let's take one other topic of interest. President Muhammadu Buhari has called for the lifting of the blanket visa ban on Nigerians by the government of the United Arab Emirates. And I'm going to come to you, Professor Kila. The president made the request while condoling with the president of the United Arab Emirates, Mohammed bin Zayed, on the death of his mother-in-law. The UAE, in October 2022, placed a ban on Nigeria, which bars Nigerians from entering the country. The Nigerian leader admitted that some Nigerians may be violating the laws of the UAE, but said that was not enough to impose a blanket ban. He said no country, including Nigeria, will condone criminality and illegal behavior. Professor Kila, your take.
Well, I think it's a good thing that the president or the diplomat in charge, in that case, I think the president was acting as what we call chief diplomat of the country to portray the concerns of Nigerians to his opposing side. It's unfortunate that we have to grovel over visas. It's unfortunate that we cannot say, if you don't treat us well, we're going to stop coming there. For the records, I personally once wrote to the Home Office that if something is not done, I'm going to withdraw my activities from the UK. And I got a reply. But it's unfortunate that the government of Nigeria does not have that kind of stance, that kind of gravitas to say, if you don't do this, I will act this way. Maybe we need to build our country and let our leaders and people stop going elsewhere to spend their life. Maybe instead of going for weddings and birthdays in Dubai, people should go and improve their villages and have a beautiful place to go to. It's a learning process. I think what the government has done is right, but honestly, I do not feel sorry for people who are banned, because really, banning us perhaps will teach us to come back home and develop our own communities. Well, but the president has done well.
Okay. Yes, Yemi.
This is slightly different from the United Arab Emirates. Reports over the last week say embassies in Nigeria are demanding for cash in this Naira crunch for visas, as opposed to taking transfers or POS payments. Now, if that's, this is just a direct call for the Minister of Foreign Affairs to investigate that, because it speaks to what you were saying about a country that even foreigners are choosing not to obey, how to deal exactly, to obey the law, precisely. And so if you can do that in Nigeria, how much more the liberty to ban people from your countries? Yeah.
Okay. Professor Awurawo.
Yeah, the point I would like to emphasize is one of the points that Professor Killer just made. When the home front is not developed, when things are not in order, you will not have the leverage when things like this happen. Yeah. The UAE is able to do that because the home front is not in order. I mean, there is a cliche in analyzing foreign policy that foreign policy is but, a reflection of domestic politics. If the home front is not in order, then they can kick you around. People won't do that to the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and all that. But countries like Nigeria, because the home front is not in order. So the focus should be on how the home front can be in order. Of course, the other addendum will be that beyond the president talking about it, as part of communication with the leader of UAE, there are also diplomatic channels to address these things so that, the issue can be resolved.
Professor Akintenwa.
I think we can commend President Buhari this time for doing very, very well. One, by asking that the ban should be lifted, there's one justification. The ban was blanket. So you cannot punish innocent people, law-abiding people, all right? And put them at the same level with offenders. Secondly, the timing of the request. Now you have your counterpart mourning the parent. You decide to ask him many questions. In terms of diplomatic practice, it's equally good, but he was able to take advantage of that particular opportunity to speak and ask for two things. Not only lifting the ban, but to ask the Emirates Airline, all right, to kindly resume duties. Because in October 2022, they decided to suspend their airline activities. Why? Because they couldn't, like Professor Awurawo pointed out, to disorderliness at home. Now they couldn't have access to their own money, their own foreign exchange, and they decided to strike.
If they've given us, if they've banned us from going there, there's no money to carry.
Yes, you are right. You see, I'm saying Buhari did well this time by bringing all these things out.
Okay, we don't have much time. But before we go, this is our last show before the elections. When we will convene here next week, the presidential election will have taken place, February 25. I think it's appropriate to close this particular show by just taking your thoughts on the election. Maybe I should start with you, Professor Akintenwa, very briefly, because we have just a few minutes
to go. On the
election?
election?
Yes, your closing thoughts, your expectations, very briefly.
Well, briefly and very briefly, 2023 elections, I ask God in His infinite mercy to just have mercy, not only on the voters, but to have mercy on those who intend to buy votes because of the implications. God is waiting to judge. Read chapter 2, verse 12 of the book of Romans, where God says that, look, you do this by law, law shall judge. And I think that we should learn lessons from that. God be with Nigeria.
Well, Professor Awurawo, briefly?
Yeah, my thoughts are that I think one of the three leading candidates will win the election.
Well,
yes.
One will win.
Yes, one
Two
of the three leading.
win.
Yes, one of the three leading candidates. I said three leading.
Okay, I thought you said even living.
leading. One of the three, leading candidates, like Bola Tinubu, Senator Bola Tinubu, Peter Obi, or Alhaji Atiku. One of the three will win. I also think that the Northwest would likely decide who wins the election. Then the advice is that Nigerians should go about peacefully, cast their votes, relax. The winner will emerge, and then we can join hands to support that person, whoever he is, so we can move on with our lives.
Yemi Adamalekun.
Well, just to really encourage people, I think we've talked a lot about what politicians are up to or not up to. I think what's clear is that in a lot of cases, they're really not about the electorate. They're really about what they are about. So electorate should decide what they want and make sure that this election is about their own preferences. And look at candidates. I mean, we've all established that political parties are special purpose vehicles for elections. And just evaluate candidates that you think would serve. They're called public servants for a reason. Servant, service. Those words are there not for per chance. They're there because that's what it's about. It's about service. Lastly, INEC did disenfranchise some candidates, some voters, by not making PVCs available. Unfortunately, I mean, we were talking about this last week. Unfortunately, that was not able to be rectified. But really to encourage those, even if you didn't get your PVCs, please go out to your polling unit and just help encourage those who are there, make up the numbers, which reduces the opportunities for people to get funny when people show up on election day. It's an important election, Nigerians. Please pay attention.
Professor Kila, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are directed to just 25% of Nigerians, not the whole of Nigerians. And my thoughts are directed to those Nigerians who can influence other people. Nigerians who feel either by education, their age, their position in their community, people can actually listen to them. And I want those people to know that a lot of people do not understand the gravity of what this election is about. They should know that whilst every person has a vote, not everybody understands the importance of voting. And those who understand that difference should try to really, these last few days, go and influence others and make sure they vote a candidate who's capable, competent, and has the heart of a good person. You should look at his past and look at his behavior with others and see if this person is worthy to be your president. In stance, in looks, in a lot of things, ask yourself if this person should be the person that when they show my name or when I mention my country somewhere, should it be the face that should come up for me? And I want people to influence others that way.
Well, on that note, I would like to thank all of you, Professor Anthony Kila, Professor Akintenwa, Professor Awurawo. And should I confer professorship on you? Yemi Adamalekun. Thank you very much. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati from our entire team here in Lagos. It's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you after the presidential election of Nigeria.